All right, we're back, and it is COMP305, week 10, lesson 10, part 3, and we're continuing off a little example. Again, we're working, for those people who are remote, we're working off of the GitHub Centennial College FPS demo section 1, which is now up into around 800 megs, right? And GitHub hasn't complained yet. So that's what we're doing. If you download that piece to kind of follow along, that's where we are. And we're doing this little idea of this terrain. So again, let's just find out where we are. Okay, here we are with the terrain, running along. Notice we have some trees and everything else here. Okay, cool. So this is good. You know, we got some trees and everything else, and we got here last time with this example here. What I want to do is add a couple of additional effects. So let's get into painting some grass, right? Because I mean, part of it is, you know, trees are cool, but grass is way cooler. We'll see how that looks. So getting into the grass piece. So if you notice here, let's review some of the stuff we did last day, right? So again, in the terrain object that we have here, this game object, we have certain, when we have a terrain object and we've configured it as terrain, notice how you have these components here, these tools. We've done this raise lower one. We've done this paint height one, where we actually paint a level height to everything. We've done a little bit of the smoothing, and let me just show you what the smoothing looks like. If I take a bit of the one of these brushes, and usually I want to use kind of a larger brush to kind of do the smoothing, and if I was to zoom out here, so I'm just going to zoom way out, and you know, again, I'm just going to kind of pull this forward a little bit. So I want to smooth some areas that are a little bit too rough. So I grab the smoothing brush, and then again, I'm just going to touch these areas. So what it does, it just flattens and takes away some of the defects as I come around. That's what these things do, is to take away some of this so it's not as harsh. That's what I'm doing here, right? So hello. So that's kind of what we do. And one of the workplaces that needs smoothing is this little beach here. So let's kind of zoom into the beach. So I'm going to kind of go to, again, my beach that I've drawn, and I kind of zoom in until it's way too much zooming in. And I'll kind of move it around. Notice that on my beach, I have the water effects that we kind of made, right? So I'm going to move in there, and I want to move right in so I can see the smoothing that I need to do. But this is a great place to do the smoothing in this area here, right? Because I want to kind of add smoothing, especially in the beach area, so it looks more I've added this other texture here. I'm going to broad brush it here just to kind of smooth this piece out. And can't really see the effects as I do it. Again, there's the brush size is very large, and I also have very, you know, a brush that's kind of in there, and it kind of produces a little bit of a more of a smoother area in here as I transition from one type to the other. Notice my trees aren't smooth, right? It's just the terrain. Okay, so that's what smoothing does. We talked about terrain painting. That's what we've done. We did a bunch of terrain painting with this one, this brush. We added some trees the last time with this one, and I want to add some more trees this time around with my other type, the other trees we can add. We added sort of like these deciduous trees, and I want to add some coniferous trees on the mountaintops. Okay, so kind of a few more. So just like we had last time, just a review, I click Edit Trees, I go to Add Tree, and now I've got to choose my game object, which is my tree. So I'm going to go down to choose conifer, right, wherever that is. There it is, conifer desktop. And this is my tree. So you can add that in, let it refresh, there it is. And it's the same kind of idea. I'm going to expand this for a second to show you that I want to make it so that it's various heights. Give it some variation here in tree height. Brush size I'm going to make pretty small because I don't want my brush size to be too small, and tree density I'm going to pull down a little bit too, because I don't want to make my tree density the same. So now that I've made some adjustments, remember we had some problems with the leaves last time. Let's see if we have the same problem this time. So I'm going to pull right out, and I'm going to swing this around a little bit. And I'm going to go to these mountaintops here, and just some areas where there's like flat area. And if it's not flat area, I'll make it flat. right? Like for example, this area here, like this area could probably be flattened out just a touch. And remember how we did the flattening out? We went to this platform area here. And I probably want to reduce my brush size just a little bit more and choose a very specific brush, like one of those, and then kind of just draw a plateau. Now, if that's too, that's like almost made a gully, right? You don't want that. So again, I can kind of brush it so it's more, just by clicking on it, a little bit more of a plane, as opposed to as deep as it was. And I can probably fit a tree in there now. So I'll go back to tree, click my tree here, and now very carefully, with the center of my mouse being where it is, I'm going to click once. You see I've added this coniferous tree, right? So again, maybe another one there. So it's kind of a tree, and it's just not bad. So a little bit of coniferous tree added in there. And it looks really realistic, right, as you can see. It's not as bad, huh? Height's a little bit weird, yeah, but that's how it is. It's like so these coniferous trees are long. They've got like a long thing here. Now, if you notice, it's kind of right there, and I can add some more, right? Again, just on the sides of the mountains. I don't want to add too many here, but just kind of a mix of trees that make sense, you know, along here. And also, maybe what I want to do is intersperse them with their other, you know, deciduous cousins over here, just to add in a little bit of tree variation here and there. And again, you can do it where you want to do a mass kind of dump if you like. I kind of, I do some selective adding of trees, make it more of, you know, not as always the same kind of trees. So kind of a mix of trees that I want to add in here. And they're going to be at various heights. Again, just to populate my forest here as I kind of go in here from a very high level. Right? So kind of a wooded area. Maybe I'll add one tree up here, but not too many because it's more of a, you know, rocky area. Maybe like one over here, maybe. Maybe I'll put the trees there. Notice I have no trees in here for a reason. I'll add other things in there if I wanted. Okay, and maybe, you know, some other stuff somewhere else. But that's more trees, right? And again, we have to test it. I always like to test it out, even when I add new things like this, because I don't know what it's going to really look like until you get closer. Like maybe these trees are all wrong, you know, for my scene. I don't know. So here I am with my scene now, so I'm running through. And we're talking like, you know, I'm doing a big bit of a sprint. And let's see how big these trees actually are. It's pretty tall. Yeah, that's pretty good, actually. So it's kind of a good size. And start getting some of these trees. And then it looks mixed with this one. I'm not so sure about. This one doesn't make any sense to me, this one here. And you can see that that one there needs to be fixed. See, it's just kind of hanging off the corner there. So that needs to be fixed up. So let's fix that one up. So that needs the kind of the corner of that tree. And again, remember how we took it away. I'm clicking the tree here, clicking this one, and I want to really reduce that down so I'm only putting the one that I want, nothing else, because otherwise it's too much, right? So there we are. And I want to click shift and click to get rid of it, right? So any one of like those are kind of on the edge, that doesn't make any sense. And I think there's only one of them that kind of did that way. But for the most part, it's looking pretty good now, like the trees and everything else. We have to add some more details, right? Grass would be the next one. Okay, so how do we add details? First of all, let's save our scene. If you like what we see so far, and I want to click this next one. So again, we've clicked all these buttons here. So again, first one is raise and lower terrain. The second one here is paint height, which paints the terrain at a certain height. You decide what it is. I just painted mine at 4.5. The next one's smooth. The next one is paint our texture. We can paint it. That's how we did this. And then we painted trees on. We decided which trees were there. And then finally, we're going to do this detail view. And you notice there's no details defined. Okay. So let's do that. Let's add edit details. I'm going to add a grass texture. And what I want to do is, you notice there's some dry color. You can make it some good variation here. Take a look. And there's also healthy color, right? Now, that's a really green, right? And if I want to ever go and modify this, we'll modify it later to kind of make it a little bit more of a spread. But for now, let's just choose the texture that we're going to use. And if I type in grass, right? I need to choose one that really makes sense. So it can't be, you know, grass frond. Can't be one of those, or fleck. It can't be one of those either. It's got to be a different kind of grass. So I wonder if it's not grass at all. I got to choose the right texture, else it won't work properly. So I'm going to kind of go down here and pick the right one. I think it might be the first one. So otherwise it won't work properly. So pick the first one that says grass 10, that one. All right, and then click away. If it's not right, then it'll show up as not right. Let's try that again. So add grass, sorry, grass 10. There it is. And then just kind of close this, click add. Right, there's my add. And now I want to reduce my brush size a lot. And same thing with my opacity. I want to make sure my target strength and my opacity is low. And I want to test it in certain areas. So again, I'm going to go back to where my player is. I'm going to press F to kind of focus back on him. And let's put some grass, like I want to make a field of grass. That's why I left it kind of open like this, right? So first let's test it a little bit in front of the player to see what I'm talking about. What do I mean by field of grass, right? So here's my player, and this is what the first thing the player is going to see. And I want to kind of choose my terrain, choose detail, choose grass, and then paint an area that I have here of grass. And see how that's wrong? That's not the grass. That's not the grass we're looking for, right? That's not the grass at all, right? That's a flat grass. That's not the grass I want. So let's undo that. So I'm going to have to go back in here and edit details, right? Because that's not grass for me. That's like a texture, right? And it might be grass frond, you know, albedo alpha. That might be the first one. Let's just check that one and see what that one does. So apply the changes there. Yeah, that's the one. And there's two different kinds. If I click on this now and I draw the grass, see how it draws nicely, right? I want to do the same thing. I don't want to draw too much grass at once. I want to keep it very low. I want to kind of create this grassy area here, slowly as I go around this area. So as the person walks, you know, he's got this really grassy area. And if I want to make my brush size bigger, I could by keeping the same value. So really low opacity, like 0.008, but yet, you know, more of a sparsy kind of grass. Now that I've tested it in those areas, I don't want to hit the hills, so I want to be very careful, because otherwise I'll lose what I've gained, right? And I want to, but yet I want to add like this grassy kind of area as I go. Again, I want to rotate my scene just to see more, because sometimes it adds in areas that I can't see. And I also don't want to go too crazy, because I'm going to add grass in other places, but I really want this much more grassy area here. That's why there isn't many trees. I did it on purpose, right? So I want to make a grassy area. Okay, so cool grass. Let's take a look and see what we've done. So if this is good. So we're going to go in here, and then we got this. And look what we got. We got like a little bit of grass, like, you know, on the reeds. Get some reeds of grass. And it's all built in. Take a look. So as you walk through, right, you got the grass and swing and the so kind of tall grasslands. You can make them as tall as you want. There's some really good variation here in color. But as you can see, it looks like, you know, walk through some grass before we get into the, you know, the woods, you know. So we've created some different areas. Again, some good variation. And now it's going to stop abruptly, look, because I stopped drawing the grass. And my recommendation is you just keep drawing a little bit more grass, even near the woods, where it would make sense for it to be. An example of this would be not under the shadows of the trees, because grass won't grow there, right? And this is a different kind of grass, right? So let's just undo that. And now that I've got the grass, I'm going to reduce my brush size here just to make it more controllable, and move into the tree area and take a different view, right? So kind of take a different view and just sparsely paint a few areas here of grass that I want to add in, just to add in more details. Like there's a big blank area right there. And let's just get in there. Yeah, so that would deserve more details of grass, right, as opposed to the areas that have none, right? But I don't want to put too much grass in there because then it becomes a little bit unrealistic, right, and splotchy. But again, I got some grass in between the trees, but not necessarily underneath the trees, right? I'm creating a wooded area here where I could have hazards. Like, for example, I might have some enemies that are lurking behind the grass, whatever, and or maybe smaller enemies, especially that I have going on here. And now playing things like Fallout. I remember the mole rats, or something like that. I think it's pretty crazy. Right? You get actually they scare the crap out of me whenever they attack me. Those and the feral ghouls are pretty nasty, right? But that's just me and my Fallout insanity. Okay, so I'm going to try and explore most of this area here. And again, it's hard to see some of this stuff because I'm so high up. So sometimes it pays to kind of go down a little bit just to see what I'm doing. There might be some areas here that I missed or I got too much up. And you can always go back and remove. It's easier to remove than to add, especially when it comes to this stuff. So let's try this out and see how it looks now. All right, so got grasses waving, and I kind of skim through. What do you think, Eagle? Grass waving there. And then I get into the weeds here, where it's like a little bit more sparse, but it's still there, and right here and there, that's some areas there's grass. All right, some areas that have none. That was a big area that didn't have any. I'm going to probably go back down. Some areas that have too much, so it's too much. But again, I'm not going to go too crazy here, right? Like, for example, maybe what you want to do is around the trees, you want to paint a little bit more of a darker area than some of the areas. But I'm just going to go right to the edge. Like, I'm still walking. And actually, let me say that, take that back. I'm jogging to get to the edge here. All right, so cool. Now I'm going to look back. Okay. And that's what I see. I kind of see this wooded area with some grass. It's kind of blowing in the wind. It's kind of cool. All right, let's add fog, right? So I'm going to go back to my window. I'm going to go to lighting, right? I'm going to put my lighting window into my the same place where my inspector is. So lighting, it's just a window under window lighting. And under there, if you notice, there is fog. And if I click on fog, just right there, what it does is it makes it so that the camera, for far away, you can't see all the details. So it creates that fog look. You can make the color look whatever you like. To me, this is a little dark. If you want to make it so it's lighter fog, you can lighten it a little bit. Again, you can make it darker or lighter, more sparse. And also the density is really important. Like right now, it's like 0.01. You can make it 0.02, make it really dense. And when you play now, just leaving it as in, so I've got exponential squared. Notice how it's like this. Like that's too much, right? But I want to show you what fog would look like. So anything beyond a certain point is fogged out, as opposed to something else. So there's a bit of fog that I got going on. Okay, so let's stop that and go back and do a couple things. First of all, notice how there's a distance for all this stuff. Like, let me bring this out a little bit. Like it says exponential squared. You can also use exponential. That's another option you can use. Let's see what the difference is with exponential by itself, and it's a little different. So I'm going to go back. So this is fog effects, exponential fog. So this is a little bit different, a little bit too dark again. And let me just look and see what it looks like for linear fog, right? So we want to try this out. Now this linear fog is neat because it has a start and end, kind of thing. And so this is a little bit, makes it more realistic in some ways, or more doable. There. So you've got a little bit of, notice how there's a bit of fogginess, a bit of lack of detail far away, but close up you're good, right? So there's a walk, and if I run down there, Notice how I'm getting more resolution in some of the trees as I get closer, right? And yet, when I turn back, let's see if I can get to this 300 meter point. When I turn back, and notice how now there's no resolution back there. Fog actually helps the processor. It doesn't hurt the processor. Because what you're doing is you're fogging out some of the details outside of our viewable area, and it also makes it for more realistic lighting, right? So again, we get the scene, and if I was to go through here and walk through, we got our trees, you know, as an example, some shadows, we got some grass blowing in the wind, you know, much more detailed kind of look and feel to them. Okay, so that's cool. A little bit of fog, and again, you can make the fog as dark as you want. Right now, I mean, again, I've chosen kind of a lighter fog. You can go as light or as dark, and you can go as far as you want, and you can start it earlier too. For example, I'm starting, it says 0 to 300. Like what happens when I start it, you know, at 50? What does it do when I start 50 away, right? So let's take a look and see what that looks like. Like 50 to 300, right? So it's a little bit more, there's more resolution there, so it's a little bit more of a, so for the middle zone, you have a little bit of fog, but not the other stuff, right? So let's go back, move that back to 0. So more fog, and again, fog just evens out everything. So I had some lighting effects. What about some wind? That's always something that we want to add, right? So we want to kind of add some wind effects. Notice that here, right? Whenever we talk about things like trees, as an example here, and I go to edit tree, I can add as many trees as I want, mass place trees and the whole thing. And the same thing goes with these little effects. Here I've got this opacity and target strength for my grass, and I've got one set of grasses. If I want to change the grass, if I think it's too green, the grass, right? I can always go back to edit the grass, right? So here I can say, as an example, that, you know what, my dry color, I want it to be a little bit more on the dark side, right? So kind of a drier color, and my green, so I'll get that out, and my green color, bring that down a touch in terms of brightness, because I think it's a little bit too green, right? So maybe a more sickly color. Once you've done that and you click apply, it applies it to all the grass in the scene. And if I was to play this again to show you what I'm talking about, makes the grass a little bit darker. So more of a, you know, again, not as bright as it was before. Okay, cool. So that's one. Now I want to add wind. So how do I do that? Again, here, by the way, if you notice here, there's a bunch of other effects on this side. This is the gear that tells you things like how large your terrain is, my width and my length and my height. It allows me to draw and control my terrain very, you know, kind of very well. I can also include a height map for more details and so on from another program. I can add blend probes if I want. My lighting right now, the only light I have in the scene is this directional light. You know, as an example that I use is my sun. And notice the baking. The baking is real time, right? What's the difference between baking in real time and baked? I can also have mixed, right? Mixed real time and everything else, where I can choose to bake some of my scene to improve my performance, right? If I go pure baked, as an example, right? Notice on the bottom right here how it's got one job that it's baking, and it's taking its sweet time baking the scene. Now, this is good because what it does is it saves us cycles. So it actually, from a performance perspective, it's there. But every time we change something in the scene, we have to rebake it from our end. So I'm going to bake my light because instead of having pure real-time lighting, it's going to be baked. So some of the shadowing and everything else you're going to see is pre-baked. Let's take and see what that looks like instead of real-time. Right? So I've baked my lights now. Okay, so still got the same effects here. But let's see what I get when I go to my trees. Okay, so I'm going to run, jog through this, you know, grassland. And I guess as I get closer to my tree, what kind of, remember, it's not real time anymore. Where are my shadows? Take a look at my shadows. Are they still there? And the answer is no, right? So again, you want to kind of mix of baked lighting, like this one. This is the detail you get when you bake a light, right? Compared to, and that's why you need multiple lights, right? Compared to doing things like adding, you know, other lights for the shadows. Because right now, when you bake a light, the shadow effects are a little different. So let's bake light, and that's for the directional. And notice my shadow type is soft shadows. I can also put hard shadows or no shadows. I can draw halos and stuff. Let's get back to that real-time lighting. So I think it's a little bit better for from what we want to do for our game. So lighting can do something here. But what about wind effects? So again, I'm going to kind of add, again, if you look at some options, under 3D, we have a wind zone, right? So I'm going to add a wind zone in there. And notice our wind zone right now, it's directional, right? There's also spherical, depending on the type of wind you want to make, right? And you can increase the turbulence and the pulse magnitude and all this kind of stuff to improve what the wind is going to look like. And remember that the wind is also going to affect the trees, right? So first of all, our wind zone starts at 0, 0, 0. So if I focus on where the wind zone is, it's way over here, which doesn't really do us any good, like it being way down here. And see the direction of the wind, right? So I don't want to do that. I want to move that wind zone. And depending on how I want to do it, I'm probably going to move it, you know, way kind of closer to the player. So I kind of have the wind blow from that direction, like from behind him, let's say. So I'm going to focus in on that wind zone. And as I kind of come in, and when I scoot around, so see what the player sees now. Sorry guys, just reorganizing my scene here. And I want the wind to kind of come from behind, right, like I said. So kind of from behind the player, I want the wind zone to be in play, right? And let's move this one here. Okay, so there's this wind. It's almost like a fan. So think about the fan is where it is right now. And the higher up I put it, you know, as an example, then the lower the grasses are won't be affected as much, just like it would normally be. The wind zone is right here. Notice that my turbulence is 1. All right, so let's see what happens with the wind zone when I play the wind zone. See effects? Look at the trees. Let me show you. Right. It's actually quite neat what it does, right? Now, this is a lot of motion, right? Because it's a strong wind, right? Let me just come closer and see what I'm talking about here. So imagine it's like a wind, right? And there's a lot of dancing going around, and it's pretty big, right? So, and look how much the branches are moving. Like these branches are moving like they're going to break. Look. Yeah, it's really, really strong for some of these things. The whole tree is shaking pretty much, right? And it's coming way from over there. Look, way over here, right? We're affecting it way over here, right? It's crazy like wind, okay? So, again, what I probably would do is stop. And then cut that, you know, the turbulence down first. So I'd say kind of cut that turbulence down to like 0.5, maybe 0.3, not 3. 0.3, 0.3. Let's save that. And then let's play that again. And let's just look at it and see what we see, right? Because we don't want to have a lot of turbulence there. Pretty strong still, but not as bad, right? So let's just go back to the tree area so you can see. That's just turbulence. Yeah, still pretty crazy, right? So let's change the main. So main, and we'll put that down to like 0.3. And again, it's directional. We'll show you the other one as well. Much more gradual. Okay, so let's pull our character out there so we don't have to walk all the way out there, just for now. So we'll go through the character and move around him a little bit. Let's see if I can do that. We're going to pull him closer to the trees so we don't have to walk. So maybe I'll start him over here. See a bit of wind, right? Some of these ones are affected more than others. It's kind of a blustery day, but not crazy wind, right? So this is pretty good. And we have some pretty good tree variation here, so it's not so bad. Yeah. You can. It's all by code, of course. So right now it doesn't affect the player at all. Like even in shots, right? But you know, his distance, he knows his shots are pretty good. You can change that. Like the shots are right now, they're all sounds like concrete, right? You can change that so it's nice. It doesn't look concrete. But right now it doesn't affect the player, no, not by default. Yeah. So let's change it so that when he hits, there's some changes we're making now. When I hit the ground, like a tile or whatever, right? It's going to make that concrete-like look. And this does, like, all we have is tiles for that. But we need some more impact for that. So we need to do a little bit more work on the player. Okay, so the impacts are more realistic. We can make some impacts for the water, that kind of thing. So when it hits the water, remember we have that water, the big water effect that we kind of made, right? So let's get to that. Almost like a little lake we made, right? And the beach. So here, when it comes to the water, and again, the water's looking pretty good, right? This water here, what we want to do is, when we fire at the water, we don't want this, right? That's kind of weird, right? We want the water to splash, right? That's the one thing we want to do. So that we have water, we got to add something in there. We added the water in. No one told us to add it in, but we got to put something in there now for that. Okay, but we've got our level. Let's save what we've got. And I'm going to exit from Unity here for a second, just so that way we can upload and update GitHub. Just that way we're on the same page here. So I'm going to pull up my terminal window, and I'm going to say CD, and I'm going to go Unity projects. And FPS demo section 1 is what I'm going to put in here. And I'm going to say git add dot, and then git, and that was a big one, git commit -m, and I'll say added detail to scene. There's more of these we can add in, like, for example, some rocks, and then git push origin master. And there's also this other scene information we can also use in. Okay, so I've updated GitHub for you guys if you want to pull it down. Right now it's about 850 megs from GitHub. It's pretty big. Okay, so let's fix up some of these impacts. Okay, because I think the impacts we can fix up. Or maybe what we'll do is, since it's 5 o'clock, and it's going to take us a while to fix the impacts since there's programming involved. Let's, import some more stuff, right? More scene stuff, like just to make I want to make your game at least a gig. Okay, if I can't put at least a gig on GitHub, something's wrong today, right? Let's try this out. So let's do this. Let's go into the asset store for a second. So I'm going to pull up the asset store and grab some more stuff. So Unity asset store. And if you search the asset store, we can find some terrain. If I look for example, if I look for Unity Technologies, Unity Technologies has, if I can actually spell properly, they have a bunch of free assets that you can download, like free, right? As you notice, right? But the one I'm looking for is more of a terrain type asset, and there it is. There's terrain assets. That's what I want. See it? So you can actually search for terrain assets in your store, and there's different kinds of trees. Like, for example, I'd like this tree to be in my lake, right? Because I've got like some, trees. And there's 12 trees, a bunch of bushes, some grass types, some other stuff we can pull in. And this is additional to what we've already got, right? Okay, so let's open in Unity. And for you, you'd have to download and open in Unity. And I'm going to add in my FPS demo section 1, which is where I'm going to open it up. It's going to do its thing in a second while I import this stuff. And I'll wait till this is updated. One day, you know how it is. I'll wait for you guys to catch up. And sometimes it's because of the way it's open in my asset store. I'm not sure if you guys have the same slowdown. Is it pretty slow? This is where I usually get disconnects from my Google Hangouts. Like it'll just disconnect here. So hopefully it won't do that right now. Oh, there it is. Oh no, that's not. Let me just close my tab up, and I'll just open up my asset store here again. So I'll go to asset store. Right, there we go. And hopefully that'll load up. There we go. And I'll put terrain. terrain. That's a good try. Assets. And we should have the one that I want, which is this one, from free from Unity Technologies. There it is. And I want to click import. All right, so let's take a look and see what we're getting with this one. So we're getting some bushes, some other materials. I'm going to probably add those in. Some different kinds of grass, ferns, and weeds, which I kind of like. We've also got some rocks. Hey, I need rocks, right? That's pretty cool. With some rock colors and additional textures for cliffs and good dirt and grass and a bunch of other stuff we can add in. Again, this will be like the one class we do texturing and painting stuff with the terrain. I gotta give you one of these, right? It's my requirement. Okay, so let's import. I know some people don't like it because it's artistic, and they're like, Igor says, like, I'm not an artist. Don't have to be an artist. You just have to paint with digital stuff, and it's, you know, it's pretty good. You have a sense of realism, which we all do to some degree or another. You played a few video games, you're gonna be okay. You don't have to be perfect because I'm not marking you on that at all. Okay, so let's see what we've got going on here. I'm gonna go back into my scene, and I'm gonna kind of pull down across my player. So here's my player. Where are you, player? Oh, you're way over here now. I want to move him back to the over here, and then we'll change the impacts later, because the impacts will take a bit of more doing to change back. Okay, there we go. So here's my player, and we'll pull him back in there. And across this way, and maybe a little bit more down. Okay, good. Okay, so I want to add some more stuff. I just added a bunch more. Let's make sure that we have our assets arranged properly, because could you grab that door? Because I have this thing called imported assets as part of my folder structure, and I just got some more terrain assets. And I'm going to do is I'm going to take the terrain assets and pull them into my imported assets, so we keep our the folders outside of imported assets pretty good. Right? So I'm going to kind of take this and put it into imported assets like this. Right? Cool. So I've got all these ones. These are all the imported assets again. Remember, I can always just trounce these imported assets when I don't need them. And that's why I put them all together. So my terrain assets has bushes and grass and rocks and other textures and some trees with ambient occlusion, an alder, a bamboo, kinds of other stuff too. And to test these aren't speed trees necessarily. These are regular trees. So an example is if I pull an alder into my scene, right? And if I want to focus in on it, so I go focus. The alder is pretty big, and it's a unique looking tree. It's not a speed tree, so you can't add it in the same way that we added in before. I'm just going to show you this. It's kind of a hero tree, right? It's kind of really big. That's what they call it, hero trees. I'm going to pull it in front of me so you can see what it looks like in my scene. Is it floating up above the ground? Probably is. That's too far. Okay, let's see what that looks like so you can see what the alder looks like. So they've got some alders, right? Like, look at that one. That's a different thing than the speed tree. Notice how when it comes to some of the effects, it looks pretty good, but there's no movement. It's like a solid shape, right? It's not moving at all. The wind not affecting it in one bit compared to the other trees, right? So that's the difference between a speed tree and a regular tree. And sometimes what we can do is for the actual tree itself, like the alder, we have how the wind will affect it based on its mesh and so on. I just wanted to point it out to you so you can see what I'm talking about here. And it also says play automatically the animations. There's some animations, clips or whatever, and then animate physics. Let's click that on for a second so we can see if there's any kind of wind effects. Right now, if I click animate physics, notice it's still static, right? So that's kind of a disadvantage there to using that type. Let's remove it, and let's see if I can add it in, right? Just like I was talking about, you know, before. So if I go terrain, and if I want to go add another tree, and here where I'm adding trees in, add a tree, add tree. I want to click this alder, right? So I'm going to look for it, and you're going to see that it doesn't come up. It doesn't come up at all. The ones that come up for this kind of tree, and it'll find it even if I search for it and I go alder. Right, it comes up here, but this is not a tree. And if I click off of it, there's the alder. You can make whatever you want, by the way. And if I click add to my tree, right? And if I draw it, let's make my drawing space a lot smaller because I don't want that many. And if I click draw, right, it's massive, right? And if I press play, massive tree, right? And a little different than we had last time, but there's absolutely no movement to it. So if you want like a big hero tree in your scene and you don't have wind effects and all that kind of stuff, I mean, you can certainly use something like this as well, especially if it's a far away detail. Again, notice how there isn't even any collider to it. Look, I'm passing right through, right? So I have to add that in as well. How do I add a collider to a tree like this, right? So here's my tree, and notice how it's random and so on. The color variation, I can also change my color variation here. And notice how it says the terrain collider is there for my physics material. But when it comes to the tree itself, if I click on alder, I don't have any kind of collider whatsoever with it. I've got alder branches, it looks pretty cool. That means I have to add it in. If I go to rig, that's a different kind of thing. Animations, if I had animations, I could add them in, but I really can't add this tree in, you know, and have any kind of effects. So let me go back to my terrain. Just want to point out to it's a different kind of tree. And what I want to do is I'm going to press Shift, click to get rid of it. And in here, I'm going to go to Edit Trees and remove this tree. Okay, so tree gone. Let's go back to details. But details are cool. I've got one set of grass. Let's add some weeds, right? So I'm going to say Edit, and we're going to add a grass type texture. But this time, instead of the grass, the way it is, I want to add in a weed. So I'm going to kind of type in weed, right? If I can spell properly. And there's weed and weed 2 and weed 3. Let's see if weed is the right one that I'm thinking about, or if it's the one that's kind of, and let's leave it as is. Yep, that's pretty cool. It's kind of a weed. And there's different weeds. So let's, I'll leave it the exact same thing from a bush size perspective. It's pretty big. Let's really reduce it a lot so you can see how big it is. I'm going to make a testing area here. So I'm going to kind of go here. And when I focus in on this area, and again, I'm just going to zoom around here and pull in and use my hand to really get me closer. It's just really big, so we have to kind of be careful how we zoom in, because as you're farther out, you zoom slower. And where my character is where I want to see the weed, so I'm going to put it right here. So we'll click on this details, I'm going to click on the weed and go right here, and then bam, and maybe add another one. That little effect, and see what it does. So I kind of added a few weeds in the front there with the grass, and then see what they do, if they make sense. Yeah, so that looks pretty good, right? So the weeds adds a little bit more variation to the grass. It's not just grass now, and I can add that interspersed with the other ones. So if I go forward a little bit, you can see how we got these weeds in here, and they all sway at the same amount. Swaying a lot. You can turn that down, by the way. So weeds work okay. I can definitely intersperse them here and there. And again, depending on where you want, you might want to have more weeds in certain areas, especially those patchy areas that I had nothing. You know, again, we're talking about lots of detail. But I want to give you the idea so you can have more just grass and weeds. I'm not going to go and draw them all right now. No time for that. But that's one thing we can do. One thing you could do is you could have a large area of weeds. So let's say I kind of draw one of those, and I kind of make my brush size massive, and then kind of, you know, even bigger, make it 100, right? And then what I can do is in the area that I know that I want some, right, I could kind of draw some weeds in here and everywhere else without adding too much work to me. Again, this fog is driving me crazy a little bit from the ability. But you can see how the fog works. Even from up here, the fog will, you know, reduce the stuff that you see. And you can't see what I'm doing, but as I come down, if I come down right to this level and I click onto it, you see how it adds the weeds, right? That's what I'm doing, just from a very high perspective, right? So, bam, 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 more weeds than anything else now, right? Weeds, weeds, weeds. So I've added some weeds. And now let's add some rocks. So I'm going to go edit details, add another detailed mesh. Instead of grass texture, because grass texture, everything grass texture and regular texture is, sways in the wind, right? Whereas what I want to do is with detailed meshes, I can choose things like rocks. So let's choose that. And I'm going to put in there rock, right? Now there's a rock mesh. Be careful. This can be out of control, right? So there's my rock mesh. Notice my colors are messed up, eh? Like my rock is not going to be green, okay? So I could choose a rock color that's a little darker. This is the healthy color and the dry color. For example, the dry color, I may want to make rusty like that, but the healthy color, I probably want to make something like a, you know, kind of a gray, right? Like with kind of a lighter gray if I want to. And I can check these out. My rusty color, so choose this one. My rusty color, I may want to make more rusty brown. Sometimes I see a little bit more rusty brown and more towards the rusty brown color like over here. So again, more grayish orange. Right? And then click add. Wait for it to come out. Now, here's the thing with this. Let's reduce my brush size again. We have to test the area to see what it's doing. And I can't impress upon you more how I can ruin your scene to put in a bunch of stuff you don't want. Right? So let's go back to where we were, to the player, focus back in there, right? Move it around, right? Because again, this is a lot of time we've invested right now in just building this bloody thing, right? And I mean, you know, we spent a little bit of time building the maze and lots of time doing this one. So we don't want to spend too much more time doing some of this, but we're almost at the end of the sculpting piece that I want to add in here. Let me add another tree. Okay, so let's test this area out. So we're going to put a rock in here and see how it's crazy big, right? Or small. Let's see how it is. Because that's where we have to really work on the most. So again, I'm choosing this other brush. My brush size is really small, and I'm just going to click onto it once. And that's not what I wanted, but that's okay. Grass is good. I wanted rock. And where's my rock? Okay. So big rock in the middle of the field, right? You got to be careful here, because as I draw the rocks, right, I'm just going to draw them interspersed here. You can see how massive they can get, right, and how out of place they look with everything else. Like, take a look at this. That doesn't look like those at all. It looks like a different thing, right? So we have to be very careful how we match it up, right? So we have to edit the details. So go back to my edit details for my rock. And that's what I knew was going to happen, just, you know. And so minimum height, this is 1 meter. Right, or 1 unit, and maximum height is 2. I want to make my box fairly small, so we're going to say minimum height is 0.25, and maximum width is 1. Let's say, so kind of a little bit of variation. It could be big, and the minimum height is 0.25 with a maximum height of 1. So kind of smaller rocks. Color-wise, I think I need to lighten those up a lot, so kind of make it so it's a lot lighter. And the darker areas here, this sick color, I want to make it so it's even darker gray, with a touch of a hint of orange. Let's see how that looks now, and apply. And I'm going to go back to this and see what my rock looks like when I draw it now. More palatable, huh? Rock, that's a little better. And that's the size I want. And if I draw a lot just to test it, so I'm going to kind of draw a few rocks. Some of them can get big, but you know, I don't want to draw too many. I want to intersperse them a little bit here and there. And I want to have a different pattern. So I want to use this kind of brush as opposed to this kind of brush. So let me undo. And we'll test that brush out, make it larger. So we're going to make a larger brush, like 60, make this pattern. So this is where they're going to grow. And then when I click onto it, you get a little bit of rocks. And so click. Kind of rocks here and there, and then in here. So intersperse between the stuff, you get some rocks. Again, you're adding detail. That's what we're doing here to the scene, and we want to just gradually paint the detail on, as opposed to all at once. That would be bad. because you know you're going to get some stuff that doesn't make any sense, right? So you don't want that. Okay, let's test this out and see what it really looks like, right? Because we saw it one way, and now we want to see what the actual rocks look like, and that's not what we want, right? See how they sway in the wind, right? We don't want that. That's just like gum, right? That's what I'm saying. So it looks nice, but you know, let's edit this. Edit detail mesh, and this is a grass type, right? And we don't want to make it a grass type. We want to make it, you know, we can make it vertex lit, but this is definitely wrong. Right, so let's again do this one more time. I know the settings, so I'm just going to kind of remove it. So we go into here, and then we don't want it to sway in the wind. That's like wrong. So let's remove it. The other thing is we may want to use them put them in as trees, right? Because they don't have any trees, don't sway so much, especially if they're solid. So edit, and then edit detail mesh. Make sure it's not grass, that it looks like vertex lit. Vertex lit is what you want. And we want to choose our color to be a little bit lighter. We want to choose our sick color to be a little bit darker, maybe even more towards the orange color, like a rust. If we can get in there, more rusty kind of orange. There we go. And then the heights is what we want to do. So again, 0.25 for minimum width and minimum height, right? That's where you want to do that. And then maximum 1. We don't want to make it so the rocks are massive. We can always add rocks on top of each other, right? That's totally cool. And we want to choose our rock, right? That's the other thing we want to do. Otherwise, no rock. Okay. Okay, and let's check that area out by just doing another test. Okay, and now that's good. Let's try that out and see if they move around, right? Rocks don't move. That's good. It's a good sign. And let us do the same thing. Put them a little bit here. And that's not the right brush. Let's use a different kind of brush so they're more interspersed. There and there, and move this across by pressing the Q button here. So we got a couple rocks here and there. Very dark though. We can always lighten them now that we've seen them. I like the placement, but I'm not sure. I still think they should be a little lighter than what they are. And let's pick the right, how about we pick the right thing? So it's rocks instead of grass. Right? And not too many, because otherwise it'll look fake. It won't look right. Right? So we want to kind of make it so that there's a few rocks, but not so many rocks, right? So go here, so maybe some over there. So again, we'll paint it from a very high level. Again, we'll just kind of add a couple here and there. And then as we go towards the this area, like the wood, this area here, you know, because it's a little bit rocky, we want to add more rocks over here, so we make it a tighter cluster. And so a tighter cluster of rocks here, and maybe we increase the we can also increase the target strength from 0.625 up a little bit. Be careful. That just means there's going to be more of them, like that. It's almost like a little avalanche happened over here. And that's probably too much. But the great thing, that's why we have really cool undo functionality, right? That's like way too much. We couldn't see from over there, but you know, it's kind of cool that we can see that what it looks like. Now, these rocks are not the type to fall. They just look like this, and it looks wrong, right? It looks like something is spewed out of something else, right? So I don't like that. It's undo, undo, and we can kind of reduce that rock size a lot. Target strength is a bad idea. So even one more, yeah. And then go back to this rock. We'll put it back to 0.625, like way down here. Yeah, there we go. And then, you know, we can draw a few more, sure, but nothing too crazy. It's not something we can draw mass amounts of. Definitely more towards here than everywhere else. And again, if I was to pull this up and zoom in a little bit more as we get closer, it's important to have a good view of what it looks like, especially as we get towards the this area here, where I can spread some of these rocks out, right? Like a little bit here towards the trees and everything else. That kind of looks okay. Yeah, and get back, maybe reduce my brush size so I have more control. Right? So kind of rock, right? So kind of a rocky area, and not too many of them in this area here. Like maybe some rocks from this part, maybe they fell from this area here, but not too many. Right? Okay, if you want to test to see if the rocks are the right color and you want to move it around, you can certainly do that by let's rotate around this area here, so I'm going to go the other way and zoom in. And I also want to pan to the right here. Let's go to the right. So, yeah, see, that's wrong too. Look how that rock is kind of hanging there. So go back here, and what I want to do is take another brush and press Shift-click to get rid of that, right? I don't want to have the rocks being painted with that larger now. Yeah. Get rid of the rock. There we are. Even if we got rid of the other rocks, I don't care. I don't want rocks to hanging off the cliff, right? That makes sense. Well, notice how what I was doing is I was trying to show you the effects of that. So if I click the terrain again, or the player, and I click this to zoom out, I can see that it's a very dark color that doesn't really go with the surroundings. Right? So that's an issue. So how do I fix that? So go back to terrain, go back to the rock, and we're going to go and click the rock and reduce the brush size a lot. Let's take that blue effect away. And what I want to do with this rock is I'm going to go edit the details now. But I'm looking at the terrain to see how it matches up. So I'm going to go edit. So it looks like this has got to be a little bit more greenish, just a touch with maybe some dark hints of color like that. And let's see what that looks like when I apply the color. It's not bad, see? So I kind of evened it out a little bit more. It's not as bad in terms of how it is. It's still quite dark though. Maybe I'll lighten it up just a touch more. So edit details, go to edit, right? And then this dark color, I'll move up the chain a little bit more just to lighten it up. And so you can see, I don't have a preview unfortunately, but this is what it would look like. So a little bit closer, still dark. One more time. So we have to do it, right? Otherwise you're going to get something that's a little bit too dark for the area and it won't look natural, right? You're going to want to kind of move it up to scale as we apply the detail. A little better. Again, we're also seeing the shadow of the rock. If I kind of zoom around it, you can see that that side is quite light now. So much lighter. It's a little bit closer to what we saw. All right, let's play and see what we get with the player, because it's always a test. And let's see if we're going to get any kind of collisions with the rocks. If it looks like how big they are compared to the player. Remember, there can be up to 1 meter. And we have a problem. What's the problem, guys? Get no collider, right? We can't climb on the rocks. The rocks are just like grass. They're just like fronds we can pass through. So how do I add a collider to the rock? Anybody have an idea? Because I've done a lot of talking. The rock is just a what we call it, prefab, right? So we have to, once we apply to the prefab, it applies it to all the rocks. So let's go to rocks, rock mesh, and notice how it does not have a collider, and I can't add it in here because my my object is not, it's a mesh, it's not a prefab yet. So I'm going to pull it in here. Now that it's here, right, as an example, I could use this rock mesh as opposed to this rock mesh. And we'll call this one, we'll rename this one our rock. So now we can get it an object, right? There's a rock. And I can add in there a collider, right? So I can add in physics 2D. We have to be very careful. If we make it a rigid body, right, it'll move, right? So I gotta make it massive. Like if I want to move a rock, you know, as an example, I'm gonna be careful because it'd be really weird. Gravity scale is also important, and so I'm gonna make this 2, so it's kind of hard to move, and not impossible. And my mass, I'm gonna make like, you know, 10. So they're gonna be really massive, like, you know, possibly heavy. It'll move me, right? That kind of thing. Angular drag, I'm gonna make this like for sure like 1.1, maybe even more. So it's hard to move these things around. So I don't want them falling off the cliffs or anything like that. You know, so Add all that in there, and then a collider. So this is the rigid body, how physics is going to affect it. And now I'm going to add physics, and then now remember what it is. We can't add a box collider. We got to be careful. I could, but when the box collider comes into play, again, here's something to see. So I'm going to focus on the rock. Here's my rock. Okay. If I add a box collider to the rock, so I go physics. Maybe a spherical collider might be better. What do you think? Oh, I had the wrong thing. I meant rigid body. Thank you. I meant physics rigid body, right? Which would be the same. So mass of 10. Yes? I could do that too, but I don't want it not to move. I want it to move very hard. It would be hard for it to move. But you can make it so that it's like, 0.5. And then, sorry, angular drag 0.5. So that way it stops. And we'll see if that's enough. Mass of 10 will make it very heavy as well. But going back, I want to add a collider. So let's just close up some of these things here with the animations. Like notice my rock has an animation clip on it. I don't think it's ever going to animate, right? So we're going to remove that. We don't have to have an animation component to it. My mesh renderer needs to be on, and that's going to stay on with my blend probes and all that stuff. But my rigid body 2D. But I want to add in a physics collider, and I think let's try our sphere collider first. That's not bad. But we're going to need to make this thing a little bit smaller, right? Because this is what our rocks are going to look like, right? So I'm going to edit this and kind of shrink it in. So it's not perfect. A capsule collider might be good as well. The only problem with the capsule collider is that there's going to be areas where we kind of go into the rock right here. So let's just zoom around it to see it from different angles. Yeah, see, it's not quite perfect. Not quite perfect there. And there's areas there. Well, that's just this is being called on the bottom, right? So maybe that's not really perfect. We might try capsule collider as well. Let's try that. Move that and add in. We don't want to always add like our mesh collider. We want to avoid this as much as possible. Mesh collider bad, right? Terrain collider is the other way we could do. But if we add a terrain collider in there, right? It makes it like it's terrain, right? So enable tree collider. We don't like it. See where it says enable tree collider. Let's unclick that for a second. And now what I want is I want to save this as one of my prefabs. Remember, just like we saved our barrels. So here's my prefabs. And I want to kind of pull this rock into my prefabs rock. And now I can get rid of this. We're going to go back to this in a sec. Delete. Now, our terrain still uses regular rocks. So if I go back here, here's our rock mesh. I'm going to edit the details. Edit the detail mesh. And where it says, go back to edit the mesh, edit. Instead of rock mesh, I want to point to rock. So I'm going to search for, there's my rock right there. And then press that. So it's an actual object now, and press apply. No differences here. But let's go back to the player and see what I get. So I want to make sure there's a collider in place, right? And I've added in a couple things to try and stem it. So make it a little better. I don't know if it's going to work, but let's see if this helps. And play. Okay, so run. And we get to the rock, and I pass right through, right? Yeah. It's added in a terrain collider. They look a little different too, don't they? Than before. They look a little bit. There's no. I mean, I'd like to add some kind of normal as well. It'd be nice to have a normal map that in there, make them more realistic looking. But anyways, it's just effects. Let's go back to my rock for a second, and I've got my terrain collider. I want to take that terrain collider off to remove component. I'm going to add a component in there that's a regular collider, and just to be on the safe side, I'm going to get a mesh collider because there's not that many of them. And once I've done that, let's play again. Now remember, I don't have to apply it to all of them. Once I've applied to one, theoretically, it should be okay. Right? So let's see if this works. And I got nothing. Collider's not working at all. So do convex. Try that again. Let's see if it's triggered. I want to be able to do this because later on when I fire at different objects, yeah, nothing. I get nothing from these things whatsoever because they're just you know, little frilly effects, and that's all they are right now. So rock mesh and a mesh collider. But I wonder if I was to pull it out, like, and actually pull a rock into my scene, like right here. So pull it right here, like one of my rocks, not their rocks. Let's see what happens if I was to actually go through it. Would it work? It's pretty big too, right? Right, so, and look, that actually moves. Huh? Oh, cool. Right, this is what I was talking about, like, you know, that making that, you know, oh. This way you can have like rocks like this on top of the mountain. And then, why is it all jittery like that? It's probably the way I've made my rigid body 2D. Well, it's probably just swaying because of how irregular it is, right? It's got a very irregular shape to it, right? So if I kind of move it, bump into it, right? I can't move it because it's so heavy compared to me, right? And eventually it'll stop moving. So let's do a couple things. Let's click on the rock, and we'll use this piece here. We'll move it up and see how it falls, just to make sure that it's got some kind of, yeah. Before I even had a chance to, but let's move it to the top of the mountain and see if it what happens with it. Right, so we're going to move it to here. Again, these are just rocks, and I'm going to climb up and push it down off the mountain. Why not? Over here, and we can get across there, over there. So I got to reorient. Like this. Focus in on the rock. So we know we have a, you know, this is a massive thing here, right, that we got going on. What it looks like in 2D and what it looks like in 3D, totally different, right? I think I overshot by far. There we go. Nope, I still overshot. On top of the mountain, there you go. And it looks like the bottom is flat too, so it doesn't make, which a rock doesn't make very nice rocks, right? Top of the mountain is a rock. It's actually going to really roll. Hopefully it won't roll too much. Right? Let's see if I can drag it in there. There we go. Actually, just make it so that there's a little bit of drop. And then look at the mountains. They fall. There, see it? Okay, let's see if I can get it to roll. This is what I want to test. I want to test to see if it's even worth doing. I don't want to stop doing that. Trigger happy bastard. Come on. There's my rock. Top the mountain. It's jagged. It's just right in here. I want to avoid being hit by it, and then move it, baby. Come on. Hit it. Come on. It's up. It's actually empty on the bottom too. Right? It's wrong, right? So, hit it. Put on top of the rock. Line up. Push it. Jam, right? Nothing I can do. It's going to sit there, and that's kind of unnatural and weird. And it's just because I made it super quick because the gravity is like 10, right? Let's reduce that. Let's make the mass 1. Just make sure it works properly. It's still there. Okay. That's not going to help us out. Just fall. Fall. Rocks fall. So obviously this experiment failed. So let's just because it's slime. So that didn't work out, and I don't know. I mean, to me personally, when I make rocks, I want them to be heavy. I want them to be, you know, stuff. There's also other things too. We have barrels like we had before from the other stuff. Some other prefabs we had before. From the imported assets, we also have additional things like ferns and other bushes. And I think this is from terrain assets. We have bushes, different kinds of bushes here. We can certainly add in to give some variation. I'm not going to continue to do this, like different flowers and ferns and stuff like that. I mean, it's nice and all, but I don't have time to go through it all. The rock, I'm disappointed. I thought that the rock would actually be a good rock. And if you download, there's a rock pack you can download that actually has all the effects you want and works nicely. This one does not. And we have to add them in individually, which I don't think is a good thing for me, right? So let's not do that. Let's just get rid of the rocks. And what's a quick way to get rid of stuff you don't like in the terrain? Well, you go into this and you click here and you go into edit details and you click remove and they're gone. So all the rocks are gone from our scene, as opposed to something that's not working, right? And these are the kind of design decisions we have to make. So that's a great stopping place. We've added some additional details to our scene. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, I'll fix the impacts, and then we'll be done from a scene rendering perspective, and then we'll see if I can transition from scene 1 to scene 2.